Hey, welcome to The Doc Analyzes Anything, the show where science and psychology meet. And we analyze behavior, any behavior, including using a flat kickball for your kickball games.
I mean, there's a lot of kicking underinflated balls around the backyard here just because I don't feel like trying to keep up with them all with the kids playing.
You got your own deflate gate happening.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But is it really an advantage if your kickball's deflated, though?
I can't imagine there's any. And I guess if you are only on the pitching team.
True. Although I'd have a hard time even rolling the ball that far if it was flat enough.
Yeah. I almost said if you're on defense, but I don't think you're technically on defense there. It's not like other sports where it's defense and offense. It's fielding or batting. Fielding or kicking.
I would disagree. I think there's a defense and offense.
Ooh, juicy.
We need Brad here since he played baseball, and so he could answer. Yes, you're playing defense in the field as you're fielding, but would you refer to it as offense, the offensive team and defensive team at the moment? I don't remember hearing that.
Well, offense is typically who's trying to gain points. Defense is defending the points, and so it could be offense and defense.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
Dr. Sparks, you're outvoted too.
Let's go and put that one to rest.
But the defense can score in football, and so you're still. Does the moment they recover the ball, does that then become they are the offensive team? Is it like in verbal behavior where the moment you start speaking, you are no longer the listener, you become the speaker? Is that what's going on here?
Potentially.
Yes. I think it's exactly what's going on here.
Everybody always criticized Skinner for not discussing the listener more, but as soon as the listener begins to behave in a way such as speaking to themselves in their head or out loud, they become the speaker. So what's the point?
And that's why you always keep your kickballs inflated.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have to get into philosophical behavior analytic conversations you don't want to get into right now. So there you go.
But a kickball is an inanimate object, and I feel like this is foreshadowing. So,
and if you were lost on a desert island, you may name that inanimate object. And so here we are talking about why is it that people feel the need to name inanimate objects for absolutely no reason.
I like it. I like this topic. This is a good one.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Steven Sparks. Here with me, as always, is Kyle Sturry, and today with us, our co-host, Chad Hartung, and we're going to be talking about names and why is it that we feel the need to name anything and everything all the time.
Done.
So knowing Chad well, I thought this would be a fitting one for him because if I remember correctly, he names absolutely everything to my annoyance. So that's always helpful.
I think I could justify it too, but we'll probably dive into that.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
What kinds of things do you name, Chad?
My cars all have names.
He has a different name for each toe.
No, it's not to that extent. It's not to that.
That would be wild, though. That would be wild.
Can you imagine trying to keep them all straight?
Your toes straight?
Yeah. Imagine kick a table leg. Damn it, Danny, not again.
I can't even. Well, I was gonna make a keep my toes straight joke, but had to do with ballet, and that's not on anybody's radar. That's not funny. Go ahead.
Did you do ballet?
My daughters do.
Okay.
They have to keep their toes straight. So
it would have been a reference only your daughters got.
Yes. Yeah. And they don't listen to this show. So, yeah.
How dare they?
If it's my turn, I don't know that I name much. I don't think I name inanimate objects that I'm aware. Well, I'd have to think about it. I haven't thought about it.
I do not name things, but my wife names a lot of things, and so I often help her come up with names. And so I guess I name by association, but I've only ever named one car, and that's because when I got the car and downloaded the app, it said, please name your car. And so I named it Rufus, which was the time traveler from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the guy that was controlling the time travel. So that was the only name I could think of that actually seemed fitting for a electric car that seemed somewhat futuristic at the moment.
Could you travel in time with
Um,
it? I don't have an electric car, I don't know how they work.
I do not have the flux capacitor. That was an option I could not afford, so we did
Yeah,
not go with that. It
that
would
makes sense.
go 88 miles an hour though. That was fun.
There you go.
Um, all right. So just for a second, just for the fun of it, just to get a little too conceptual for everyone, probably. Um, like naming objects seems potentially silly, but like, why do we name pets or other animals, or why do we even name our people? And by that, I obviously mean our children, but I mean, we have to have something to refer to each other by. But what I'm really getting at, the difference seems to be that we tend to treat our names as if they are part of the self. If like it is what
Mhm.
makes us us, is that we have this personality that is labeled the way it is. And so, do you think you'd still be the same self if you had a different name?
Yeah, if my name was Brendan, I'd be a totally different person.
Mm,
No
yeah.
question. Because my experiences from childhood and name calling and winning trophies and who I related the name Chad to, that it was pretty rare. All of those things I think play into who my identity became. But if it was like a more recognizable name or one that's more common, I think that I very well could have shaped differently. Maybe not drastically, but maybe enough that I wouldn't be the same person.
And that's so, like, reliant on the culture and context and society that you, like, happen to pop onto planet Earth's radar too. Like, if you were named, uh I'm trying to think of, I just had a great example in my head, now I can't remember what it was. But a name got very popular very quickly due to a pop culture phenomenon a few years ago, and I forget what it is. What was it? But people who had that name were suddenly painted in a different context due to the sudden change in attitude toward that name. I'll think of it at one point and I'll yell it out during
Yeah,
our
just
episode.
randomly scream it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I do want to point out that I see what you're saying here, but Kyle, and to a slightly less, but still the same extent, Chad, are names that are known to be Monster Red Bull jumping off of a cliff on your BMX bike type names, and neither of you personify that. And so, to an extent, I see what you're saying, but I also don't know if you are as much your name as some people in our society may be.
George Carlin had a great bit about names.
Speaking
He's
of
like,
Rufus,
oh yeah, oh
yeah,
yeah,
he played Rufus, so there
that's
you go.
right. Yeah, that's why that came to my head. But he did have a great bit about the name Kyle. He's like people when I grew up, people had or men had men names like Frank or whatever. He's like now people are walking around. He's like I'm Kyle. He's like just flapping his arms around. My name's Todd.
Uh, And if Adam Sandler's stand up has taught us anything, his comedy CDs that we had back as kids, um, all Steves are just assholes. And so there you go. It's just that one fits, obviously. But
I'll give you another example. Interesting. So I'm a dual citizen in two different countries, United States and Colombia, and I have an entirely different name and essentially identity for Colombia. And it's not
Mm,
even that like I'm a different person, but like how people interact with me with that name, my Colombian name versus my American name is they first of all they mispronounce Chad, but they pronounce my Colombian name no problem.
well, also, it probably really throws them off that you don't speak Spanish at all. And so they're trying to speak to you with your Colombian name in a way that you would understand and you don't
And they
understand. So
look at
that,
me and they're like, he should know what I'm saying. What is
yeah,
this?
yes,
Is your
that
does your Colombian name invoke like some like out of character connotation?
Done some research on my Colombian name, and it's not common at all, especially in its spelling.
Mm,
Um, but it would be the equivalent of like Chad and Chadwick. So its common spelling is a little bit longer and super uncommon, but the shorter version is easy for anybody to say or spell, but
mm,
also uncommon.
hmm.
now I wish your name was actually Chadwick, because that'd be a lot more fun to say right here during
Can you
this
imagine?
podcast.
Can you imagine who I'd be if I was Chadwick nowadays?
No, but getting back to it too, the way because Skinner talked about it, how we tend to look at it in behavioral science is all things being the same. You go through all the same experiences, everything is extremely similar, like then you would be the same person because all the things that make you you have also happened to you again, regardless if you're in one part of the world or another. But what you're saying does make sense too, because maybe there are small instances, like little situations that you may not even pick out that would be the difference between a Chad versus a John, so to say. And then now that was enough to make you more you than you would have been otherwise. And so I think in general, we can assume that we would be the same person, except for those small differences that in the different ways the world has treated us or the different experiences we've had because of the name we have.
And the function of names, I mean, this is maybe getting more philosophical too, but like the function of your name, I mean, like my kids' names right now essentially are uttered when I need them to do something or stop doing something. Like it's mostly so that I can get their attention efficiently, as opposed to assigning like any sense of self to them, or like saying like, oh, that you personify this name by, by being these characteristics and things. Like it's mostly just like, no, like stop hitting your brother.
Yeah. And it is over time. And as verbal behavior becomes more and more strengthened, and we know you at 2 is not you at 10, is not you at 18, is not you at 30. And so that changes over time. But it'd be interesting to see at what point do we tend to think, okay, this is now us, this name personifies us, because my 2-year-old, like, yeah, we almost never use his name, and he's starting to speak, but he doesn't really use his name.
Mm,
But our 4-year-old, you're starting to see him note more this is part of how he sees himself, you know?
yeah.
And I bet it's different for different people, but this gets into a conversation we'll have in a future episode, I'm sure, where I'm going to upset everybody by saying there is no such thing as the self. It's just the embodiment of your experiences and your verbal behavior combining to create this idea that we speak of as the self. But do you think you could be you or even have any resemblance to yourself if you had no name at all?
Hmm.
Like really getting down to it, a name is nothing more than a label so we can keep each other straight and refer to each other and call to each other. So
Right.
without that, if we had another way to get each other's attention or to refer to one another, or let's look back at like last names, and like Johnson just means son of John at some point, or um like Miller was because someone worked in a mill. Like they were just referring to help someone figure out which John or which whatever you're talking about. And now they seem to somehow in society built this idea of this is the family I'm from, this is the self I have.
Right.
So if we didn't have it the way it is now, if it was just a way of referring to someone, do you think you'd still feel like you had this thing inside you that made you you?
It's hard to be completely unique, like Prince or Cher. You can't like name yourself one thing that nobody else would be. So you're automatically like every man born in the year 1985 was named Kyle. I mean it's basically the most popular name I think of that year. I could be wrong about that stat. But then there's so, like, since you can't be completely unique, the last name modifier helps. But then I remember the name I was trying to think of. It was Jeeves. The joke was like, if your name was Jeeves, then you were destined to be a butler. Like you'd never met a Jeeves who's like a lawyer. Like they're all butlers. You know what I mean? So, um, I do think that cultural context is really really crucial in like how you even understand yourself and how people look at you and like say your name and interact with you. Like all those little uh you know micro exchanges essentially, and little nuances can really really affect things. So no, I don't think I'd be the same person if I had no name.
Yeah, I was almost named John. It was just like at birth, my mom saw me and changed it to name me after my dad. But there's a certain level of like, first of all, I don't know if John would have been fitting for me, but I may not have been who I am had I had that name. But Steve is popular enough that you come across others, maybe weekly, monthly, that sort of thing, but not so popular you come across that frequently. Like in school, there'd just be maybe one or two others. And so it was often more like, much like the Highlander movies, like there can be only one. Like, and
Right.
so I have to take everybody else out, so I am the one. Whereas, and I'm sorry to anybody out there listening that spells a name like this, but if you're doing it with the PH, you're wrong. That's just a fact.
Does it ever end in P, like Steve, like
No, I'm like the
STEPH?
Steven,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
Well, you just
But
alienated a lot of listeners, Steve.
if there are a lot of listeners, then I may have alienated a couple. I don't know. For anybody in northern Michigan, we like scattered the area with stickers for the podcast while we were up in Traverse City over the weekend in Charlevoix. So if you find one, let us know. I only stuck in places that were appropriate, like where there are already a lot of stickers or where the bar said, yep, we'll put this up on our wall or something. But
I was going to say, I tried to get you to put him in other places, and you held your own. You said, nope, that's not a respectful place, Dad. Don't be weird.
I was really worried that we'd get negative press instead of no press. And so maybe an arrest here for,
Kyle, I said all press is good press. I don't know if you believe in that or not, but I was trying to justify and say, Kyle's got my back on this.
All press is something, yeah. Yeah, sure.
It exists. So, yeah,
unless
we'll
it's fake
get
news. I'm just kidding.
We can get into like naming people and the self and what is it really in the future, but just get people thinking, get people aggravated with me, so now they want us to talk about it so they can get more aggravated and later on, that sort of thing. All right, so Kyle said you're not really a namer. Do you have anything that you've named that might be out of the ordinary?
Oh, man, I mean, I think it was like a joke at one time, like a name my guitar or something, but I don't even remember what it was. But I do feel like cars are like precious things, or like things that are like, not just like common day items. Like you wouldn't name your pencil, but like you might name your computer or something like that. But no, I've just never really done it. I don't know. I've pets.
Yeah. Chad, what about you? Besides cars, what else have you named?
I've been trying to think about that because you made it out like I name everything. Outside of cars, nothing really comes to mind. Not bonkers. You may be thinking of something that I'm just not thinking about.
No, I feel like you named your bike when we were younger, but that's like along the same line as.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't remember that.
Maybe like your Pog Slammers back in the day may have had some names. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Which is there's a little bit of irony there because like I don't watch a lot of sports, and the main reason that I don't keep up with sports is because I can't keep up with the names of the teams or the players. When I go to a networking event and somebody introduces themselves, it's escaped me almost immediately. So like names are really difficult for me.
Oh man.
Yeah, but that might be perfect for me too, because when I was teaching in during the master's or PhD program, and I had all the students get in alphabetical order by their first name, mostly because it's easier to pass back papers and stuff. But I told them all, listen, this is so I don't have to remember your names. So, don't get a big head or something if I remember it. And then I also had 3 Jacobs in that class. And so I just named them 1, 2, and 3. There was no like last names available. And they didn't even have Jacob anymore. It was just 1, 2, and 3. And when 2 dropped out, 3 didn't get to move up to 2. You stay 3. You are 3 in my eyes. But both 1 and 3 end up going to grad school and are behavior analysts now. And so it's probably because of how well I taught them in my treatment of them that they are where they are today in the world. So there you go.
Can't argue with that.
It's a classic Simpsons episode where he gets put on an island by the like global elites, and he's got a number. And he's like, some guy's like, "What number are you?" He's like, "I'm not a number. I'm a human, and my name you can never." He's like, "Oh wait, I'm number 5." And then he turns around, he's like, "In your face, number 6." Like,
so I didn't have any like specific additional examples, but I'm sure I have a friend named Michelle who's just a plant lady. I'm sure she names her plants. Boats have names. That's an interesting one, and it's almost like I don't want to say standard protocol. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but it's like the thing to do.
I think it's bad luck if you don't name your boat. And we have a pontoon tritune that it has a name in theory, but we never like put it on there, and we don't refer to it by that. But that may be because if we ever have a nicer boat later, I want to be able to use that name again. And so it's not really named, it just is kind of named.
You could
You want
probably
you want to know
share
the
the same
really
name.
dorky behavior analytic name that we would give it?
I choked.
That is the FI scallop. He has fixed interval
I like it.
responding or
I like it.
behavior, has a scallop type shape when you're graphing it, and yep.
Nerd. So
Oh,
I
it's
was thinking
bad.
like FI,
It's
was that
bad.
iron? I was thinking the iron scallop.
Yeah, like that's probably what people would think, or like there's like the initials, but no, it's fixed interval responding, creates a scallop shape, and scallop is water related. So there you go.
Man, I was really hoping I could think of something really clever, but a minute went by and I was like, man, I'm still quiet.
I was
Yeah,
thinking BX to the future, like Back to the Future, but BX.
Oh man,
that'd
you
be
guys
like
are
a
better at
car.
this than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife has named. First of all, we have to name like every stuffed animal that comes in the house. We have a 12-foot skeleton out front named Mr. Bones. There's an animatronic werewolf named Wolfred.
Because of Wolf.
Yeah, Wolf. Fred, yeah. The bald eagle that flies around up north that we see sometimes is named Harriet. It just seemed very American for some reason.
Nice.
Um, her the sourdough starter yeah. I can't now. I'm trying to remember. It is like a grandma name that like just makes you feel like a home cooked,
Isn't
a home
starter like
baked loaf.
isn't that like millions of organisms though?
Yeah, but they're like collectively one. You know what I mean? It's like
Like a
the
hive
hive
mind?
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I get that. I get that if you have multiple starters, because you could say like, how did Bessie do with this batch versus how Brenda did, right?
Yeah, no, it's just the one, and
Or if she gets really good and then sells it, it could be a brand for it.
it doesn't need to
Oh yeah.
be to refer to one or the other. It is just a thing, and maybe we should have asked Brad to be here as well, so we could say if it's a family thing versus just
I am
a.
curious if it's a family thing.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him later, but yeah, no, it's just everything needs a name, and I'll help come up with the names. But if I have to name something that I own, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's dumb. I have no interest in naming my own things. So it's interesting, but and again, this is kind of a theoretical conceptualization of what's going on behavior analytically. It's not necessarily that something that's gone out and been tested, or that there's really not enough early human history to know what's going on and for sure why we do this. But ever since humans started developing language, we do know that we've come up with explanations as to why we do what we do, why the world works the way that it works. uh a lot of times it was spirits or different gods, or you know angering some entity somewhere, that sort of thing. They're talking about the mind almost as this ghost inside us pulling the strings, that sort of thing. um and as we attributed these characteristics to things that make us who we are, we started finding these same type of things that we would attribute to other things and animals who had some overlap with the way we were. And so, you know, your dog often will act in ways that seem human to you, much more so than a non-domesticated animal. And so we would often treat our pet to be more human like, or more like us. And so it would make sense that we were going to name our pet versus a wild animal that just crossed our path. Um, Also, kind of an aside, but does it seem to you like nowadays we tend to treat our animals better and love them more than a couple hundred years ago? Or is that just kind of based on my small view of the world around us? Because thing about my family that I haven't seen in a long time, but who had working animals on the farm, and including their dogs who would come in the house, but they were still the farm dog. It seemed like they were not treated the same way as our dog, which was just a member of the family that slept in bed with us and sat on the couch with us, you know?
But yeah, my dad grew up a farmer. Animals were very they're there one day, they're not there the next day. We'll get a new animal. Uh when we got dogs, he kind of had that mentality. Like the dog would get sick, and like as kids, we are like, we go to the vet, and he was like, "You don't go put the dog down." Like just kind of confused by that whole like, it's like why we could get a new dog, like or we could take care of this dog that we have now. But yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I think just I like dogs and I want them to thrive. So, but yeah, it's a different mentality for sure.
Chad, do you think that it's like generational too, that as a whole, people, at least in the United States, treat their animals differently than they used to, or does it just seem that way because we've moved away from that agricultural society, you know?
Yeah, we've moved away from it. And like my sister, she has chickens. She named all her chickens, and it was for identification purposes more than anything, right? And when it came time for slaughter, that made it harder for her. So it was caught her in a weird situation. But um, yeah, I think that we have domesticated our dogs, and they become part of the family, and so they're less leaned on for work and more leaned on for companionship. And so naming has probably changed too. There was probably
Hmm.
a structure behind the naming when they were working dogs that it was easy to say so that they knew we were talking directly to them, where now it could be anything. Could literally be anything. Could be a celebrity's name that you've chosen to name your dog
I
because you
I
you
do
don't expect work out of them. They're just
I
companion.
I do hate that when somebody's like, "This is my cat, Harold Alexander the Third." I'm like, "What is happening?" I don't want that. Like, name him Furball.
It's
Yeah.
like, Fluffy, go take out that wolf. It's coming after the sheep. Like it
Yeah,
just doesn't.
exactly.
It does seem like the maybe there was a turning point with our society where we're moving away from that, and at some point there was that, we could have moved away from having the domesticated animals in our lives as much, but instead, nope, we've just taken them in and made them part of the family rather than having fewer animals. And we could always talk about for hours the different reason people keep animals and the companionship and the reinforcing nature of that, but it is interesting just to think that the way naming those animals has changed likely over time just based on the way they're functioning in our lives.
Yeah. As far as naming, maybe I'm changing subjects here, but naming inanimate objects, is there and like besides just like characteristics that might share with like other things we've learned in our repertoire, is there something to like superstitious behavior or like magic mands or something like that where I'm thinking of like the gambler in Vegas like naming the dice or something like that. Like there's certainly elements of that in everyday life, I would assume, if we're naming uh, something at a basketball game or whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so the way we talk about superstitious behavior is basically behavior that's been shaped by a reinforcer that wasn't actually controlled by the behavior. And so, you have your football player who never changes their socks. That the very unlikely that having slippery, sweaty, old, stinky socks actually helped them in the previous game, but there's that idea that maybe it did, or I can't change anything. And so we treat those socks as if they played a role, as if they wearing them was reinforced by winning the game. And so that may be the same with I named one thing one time joking around, and now all of a sudden I've done well, and then someone else picks up it, so they start naming them, and then so on and so on until it becomes a pattern that we normally see. I know when we were partying a lot when I was younger, a lot of people really enjoyed naming, the pipes they'd smoke pot out of, and even looking at them like the movie Half Baked, where every different thing had its own clever name. And so I
Yeah.
think that might have had to do, if I remember correctly, like there was some superstition with getting caught with it by the police back at the time when it was not legal to have. You were more likely to get caught if you didn't name it or something. Like you're gonna lose it if you didn't name it, something like
Interesting.
that.
I always thought it's because we all played favorites, and we were like, oh, we need to make sure we bring whatever.
Well, and it was always silly too, or like, oh, like it's gonna change colors, it's gonna do all these cool things. Like, no, it's just getting dirty and gross. But that's beside the point. So,
Back to the superstition thing. So I played multiple sports throughout middle school and high
you
school,
just said you hated sports. What are you talking about?
but I played really well. I just can't keep up with them.
Sometimes we do things we hate.
Yeah. And I had a specific number that I would almost always play, and I definitely feel like I performed better when I had my number. And when I was forced to change numbers because somebody else had it, I was in my mind able to justify why my new number was okay, because my number was 13, I got 26, so it was double. I was able to justify it. And
13 was your lucky number?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and in football, certain positions wear certain numbers. And so
Yeah, there's like a range, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
like line often have high numbers, right? So Steve, you were probably like 60s, 70s, 80s for your number.
I was more defense, so usually 90s, but yeah.
Yeah, and I was running and receiver, and so I was in the teens. That was normal, having a lower number. So it's interesting, the number thing, because I wasn't even thinking about like on the superstition side, but I definitely had a connection with that. I didn't name my jersey, but I definitely had like this connection and commitment with that number.
And I never had any of that except playing beer league softball. And I'll give you one guess what my number is, but we don't even have to get into the answer on that one.
Yeah,
so
we know.
All I know is my wife told me I could not wear it to pick the kids up from preschool. My old softball jersey. So
it sucks being an adult.
Yeah. So going back to this a little bit, talking about the science of it, it's kind of along the lines of the superstitious behavior and what we talked about with the ingenuity or novel behavior episode. The attributes that we have that overlap with other objects or other animals, we can talk about as a metaphorical or metonymical tact extension. And tacting is just the labeling or calling something of something, referring to it, and then reinforced by social praise saying like, yep, you did that correctly. And so, for example, Skinner talked about, they say like a body part, like your foot falls asleep because there is an overlap between the stimuli or the sensation of your foot being asleep and not having that same tactile sensation or a different tactile sensation and being asleep. And so our best way to describe that experience was to say it's a metaphor for my brain is asleep, my mind is asleep, my foot is also asleep. And so a lot of what we see here in I think we'll notice with a lot of the things that at least we personally name, and even with my wife, a lot of those things that she names have some overlap with animals, which have overlap with us, and a lot of that comes down to being alive or behaving or having an action that seems somewhat alive or overlapping in some other way.
Are we more likely to like care about something or preserve it once it has a name? So let's say I name my cell phone. Am I going to take better care of it now that I've named it?
I think that is kind of a chicken or the egg type conversation. And again,
yeah, but we know we know which one it was.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's always the egg. All right. Anyways, the genetic transformation occurred.
But like in your mind, do you think that it could?
First of all, I have no mind, so don't say that.
Yeah, don't go there.
Classic Steve. Oh, it's chicken or egg. Moving on.
It's the egg. The genetic transformation occurred at the moment of conception, and so once it hatched, that had occurred. But anyways,
naming our cell phones.
Yes, naming a cell phone.
About.
If you were looking at it and like, if you named every cell phone, it just was something you did, you always had this name for it, then it's likely that it would have a personal value to you, and that is part of why you were naming it. What I will say is going around and naming things just hoping you'll care for them more and take care of them better seems less likely to change your behavior than giving it a name because it has meaning to you. You know what I mean? It seems like you can maybe artificially produce some of that, but not to the extent that you were talking about, as if like, all right, I named my I don't know, my favorite hat or something like that. And it's my favorite hat, and that is why I named it. And so now that I've named it, or even you like talking about your sister's chickens, maybe because I've named it, it seems harder to butcher them, but it's likely she would have had that connection with them had she not named them. And it seems harder to now go through that process because of the name, but it was that connection of raising them and caring for them and interacting with them that probably really made it hard, not necessarily the name. And the name is just kind of an overlap that makes it more salient to us in the moment.
What was the? Oh, go ahead, Chad.
I
Sorry.
was just gonna say, so got it. So I can't, if I like buy something expensive for my wife, I can't have her name it and expect it to last longer.
It may be slightly more likely, but I cannot just say that that's how we should all go around trying to be more responsible, is just naming a bunch of random stuff, because I doubt that would work.
You said my role here is to bring it to reality. So
You're good. It was a good question and took me down a path I didn't expect to go with it, which is always fun. So
She's like, what would I do with this? Like, but I named it Pauline. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, never mind. I love it.
just screaming, she's dead.
What was the experiment? Famous, I forget the name of it, where the participants thought they were inflicting pain on other people, but they.
Ooh, yeah. What was that one? I'm not gonna remember, but
is that the Harvard
basic.
Project? No, you're talking about
Mm,
something else.
Stanford was the
Stanford's prison. There, all right. We'll maybe look it up in the background. I'm talking, but it was the one where basically you were supposed to
Milgram.
hook.
The
What?
Milgram
Yeah,
experiment.
yeah.
Yes.
And so you're hooking them up to electrodes and making people think that they are shocking them, even though they were just actors pretending to be shocked. And it was testing how far the participants would go with delivering the shock based on being told to do it, even though they knew they were causing the pain.
My question is, and they went decently far.
Much farther than anybody expected them to. Yeah.
Yes. Do you think they would? Did they receive the names of the people that they thought they were shocking? And if they did not, I don't think they did. But if they didn't, do you think that that would have changed? If the person they were hurting had a name assigned to them, would that have changed the outcome?
It could have. And it's weird because I think it all depends on your interaction and perspective with other people, other humans. Do you walk around just seeing the masses, and then when you pick one out and learn about them individually, regardless if you have a personal relationship or not, do they become more human to you? And if so, then it's likely. As we know, we hear about people who try to, if they're abducted or something, humanize themselves with their abductor, so hopefully they won't be injured, and maybe that working and sometimes not. And even on the other side, the Stockholm syndrome, where like now your captor can become human to you and you start to care for them under those situations. And so those things can have an effect, and it's very interesting. But I think it's more interesting to determine when that occurs and when it doesn't occur, rather than to make a blanket statement of whether or not for your average person that would have an effect. But I do think the perspective from members of our society would be that that would have an effect. I think people generally think it would, but I think it's much more specific to a individual's learning history. And
Yeah.
maybe people tend to have more of a collective learning history with that, and that makes them more likely to react that way.
Said that 65% of uh the level of obedience was 65% when delivering the highest level of perceived shock to the targets.
Yeah,
The
and
wild one. I would love to do an episode about this.
we can do it. We'll have to come up with a way to make it a little bit more of a discussion. But yeah, no, that would be an interesting one to just look at and see, like, why is it that they are willing to? Because most people would say there's no way I would ever do that. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned the Stanford prison experiment, most people would say, well, I would never treat people like that. but all it really took was flipping the roles, and all of a sudden you're in power, and that is how people reacted. I
Yeah.
think it is that effect that not all people react that way, but many do, and the mob mentality that kind of creates this idea that people have about police and other authority figures who now misuse that because of that power they've been given, even though that is not everyone. But the fact that that occurs at all in society is something we need to look into and try to prevent.
Yeah.
um So yeah, we said, we're naming animals because there's overlap with our behavior, and the more the domesticated, more they become close to us, the more overlap we tend to find in them. And you can see that again, where like how much people talk to their animals or treat their animals like humans, or talk about how human-like they are, because we humans all think we're special and everybody should try to be like us, basically. um, and then other animals, you start naming maybe the deer that comes into your arm frequently, because there's this overlap between your dog and the way they behave, and the deer and your interaction with the deer. um, and so it's likely that there was a process of this stimulus now overlaps with this one, and this one overlaps with this one, and then it kind of goes down the line farther and farther away, where we start naming and humanizing things that are completely inanimate, like you know trees. You can't really argue, or plants, whether they are truly inanimate objects, because they do have life and they do behave in certain ways depending on the environment around them. But you know pet rock, and everybody was naming their pet rock. What was like the 70s, everybody loved the pet rock. And so that overlap kind of goes down the line, and we can't say that it didn't happen fairly simultaneously, but just knowing that we know what we know about human behavior and the way other things have gone down these same pathways, it's fair to at least take that leap or that guess that this is kind of the process that it took.
Yeah.
um so what overlap would we say, like with the sourdough? Well, that's pretty easy, because we know that, like Chad mentioned, I think it was Chad, that it's millions of tiny organisms. They are alive. And so the
Nope,
overlap,
it was me, but it's cool. He can take credit for
yeah,
it.
we don't give Kyle credit for anything. He might
I
get a
know
big head.
biology.
Yeah. Uh, Regardless of, like, if you're going to name a plant, what's the difference between the sourdough? That life has overlap in and of itself, just the fact that we know that it is living there. Or cars, if you have a car that, all right, when do people tend to talk about the names of their cars or talk to their cars? Like if you're getting ready to beat someone off the line, you're like, all right, Betsy, let's get going. You know what I mean? I remember my cousin had a car that was really beat up when I was little, and it would break down a lot. And so if it would start clunking at all,
Mhm.
she'd pet it, be like, all right, it's all right. And I don't know, whatever its name was, let's keep going. Let's keep going. And so it is kind of these behaviors that make one car maybe not unique, but slightly different from another car you've been in, or more personable to you, that tends to be, I think, what has that overlap with kind of human-like behavior, even though it is a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something too, even just like um, adding like human characteristics to a machine per se, or whatever it might be, but like to a machine, then like that car dies someday, then uh, you kind of get to experience the cycle of life in like a way that's not going to like cause you immense emotional pain per se, but you can still take a moment of gratitude and reflect upon the life of this car with a human name. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it can be more sentimental.
And this, again, is gonna be another episode sometime, but I've never been a big fan of change. And, like, I remember being a little kid, my parents got rid of, like, the van they had when I was born, and I think I was 7, and I was just devastated that this giant old conversion van with 200,000 miles was going away, you know what I mean? There's no reason to be attached to it, except that it was the only that and my dad's little pickup truck were the only vehicles I had ever known. And probably because my parents would always be like, "Oh, this is your van. We got when you were born so we could take you around places." You know what I mean? Attributing things to my life that were there because they were being generous, but really wasn't mine, you know?
Right. harkening back to the earlier conversation, I remember my dad's old pickup truck now, and if it speaks to his lack of affection for animals, he had a bumper sticker on the back of that. It was a cat, cartoon cat, but in crosshairs, and then it said 1,000 confirmed kills on the side. And I don't know why he thought it was so funny. It's not like he intentionally ran over cats or shot them, but he loved that.
I think my dad's truck I was not attached to also because it was one of those little like S10 pickups that you had to sit sideways back behind the main
Yep,
seats.
that's what
And
this
every
was.
time he'd hit the gas, my head would bounce off that back window, which is probably why I am the way I am today. And so uh, I probably was not as attached to that because of the number of headaches I got after smacking my head on that window.
I got headaches with how bad the exhaust flooded into the
Yeah.
car itself, into the cabin.
Yeah. There
Mm.
was something about those trucks that it's almost traumatizing, but not quite.
I can talking about it. I can smell that. It's not a bad smell, but it's just the smell of like kind of like rust and like old leather and like dirty floors, and then uh carbon monoxide
Yeah,
essentially.
it's kind of like going back to the stimulus pairing.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a headache thinking about that truck the same way I did walking to Builder Square as a kid.
Builder
But just still,
Square.
yeah,
Whoa.
just still a wild one. I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
But going back to like humanizing the machine, like look at people with their the VW bugs putting like eyelashes on, the headlights. And I remember with the old headlights that used to raise up and down, and people would change the angle that they would rise up to make them look like they were squinting or looking mean at people, things like
Yeah.
that. Even the stance of the car.
Yeah. And I don't know if we even thought about this, but with the onset of AI and just the general population's attitude towards it, I do see kind of a an attitude that some people interact with it as though they are interacting with a living sentient creature, and thus, I mean, you say, "Hey Siri," "Hey Alexa," or whatever, like all the time. Like we are naming things kind of because that's how they work now.
Yeah, and it does make it easier to interact with also. I think it depends on where, the generational gap as well. Like I talk to Alexa like I'm just giving a machine an instruction. I turn on this song or turn on the light. Where my 4-year-old's like talking to Alexa like, please turn on Who Let the Dogs Out. Thank you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is more of an interaction like it is a sentient being.
When the robots take over, we know who they're going to favor, though, between the two of
Yeah.
you.
And so we just have to hope that the kids still favor me as well and help me out with that.
I still say
So,
please and thank you to my so we're really just humanizing the world, right? I mean, we name to humanize and make
Mm,
things that may be less human a little more.
yeah.
it's like we are finding ways, and not purposefully, but to attribute and understand things around us as if we would understand one another or ourselves, even though there might be quite the leap. Like I remember knowing people that have a nice, like worn in old chair or a beat up old gross couch that they're naming, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And the nice old recliner that you've had for 20 years that just fits you just right makes sense, or treating like that couch like it's about to come alive because it's a little bit too gross at this point, that makes sense compared to a nice new couch where I've never thought of anybody or heard of anybody naming something like that.
I don't think I've ever heard of anybody naming a couch.
No, it's like once something develops what someone might refer to as personality because of the way it wears in and is
Yeah.
used, it seems like
Yeah.
we're more likely to name it at that point.
Interesting. So the couch was not named when they got it. It was later in its
Right.
lifespan.
Yeah. And that was one of those, again, situations where we just name everything around us once it has its place and has its personality, sort of thing. But again, a couch can't truly have personality. We just call it that because of the overlap with what we call our personalities and what sets one couch with the same design apart from another.
Is there a threshold where naming is just unnecessary? Like,
Yeah, it starts with and ends with like dogs and cats. That's my line right there. That's why I don't name other things, but
No fish?
oh, I'm sure I named my fish, but I don't remember. Good one though. I was a small child. My grandmother decided she wanted goldfish, and I was too young to be watching probably either show, but she was aware that I liked Ren and Stimpy, and then she had heard of Beavis and Butthead, but didn't know
Yeah.
really what it was, and so she called them. It was, I think, Beavis and Stimpy were the name of the fish that my grandmother named.
That's amazing. That's an
Yeah.
amazing story. I was gonna say, going also in the vein of 90s TV, Pee Wee Herman's couch did have a name as well, but it was also
Hmm.
like alive.
Yeah.
Was it Cherry?
I don't remember. I didn't really
I
like
love
that
you,
one.
Cherry.
That show kind of freaked me out as a kid.
I thought
He
it was
was
great. That was great.
um what's even funnier probably about the goldfish story is I was so unaware of what was going on. I was young enough that I didn't know it was Beavis and Butthead. I thought it was Penis and Butthead. And so I was really uncomfortable that my grandmother named her fish Penis until someone corrected me.
Grandma was a pretty progressive thinker.
Yeah, she was. And knowing my grandfather who, like, just absolutely could not stand swearing, I just wonder where that conversation went in there, but he used to like, we'd sit there and I didn't have cable, so I'd go over there to watch, South Park when I was, like, 12, 13, and he'd pretend to be asleep so he didn't have to act like I was hearing the things I was hearing.
That's a that's a baller grandpa move right there.
Yeah. Uh, alright, any other thoughts? Anything else to tie it all together?
No, I mean, I wrote down. I have this note talking about naming houseplants, and it was imagine somebody named their houseplant Planty DeVito instead of Danny DeVito. I don't know.
I like
I
it. I like
I
it.
thought it was funny, but
I think I
maybe
would.
not.
We can't keep houseplants alive, and so I would just, you feel bad you killed them. That's all. So
Yeah, we're excited that our succulents make it, 6 months at a time.
I feel like it's misleading that succulents are supposed to be easy to keep alive because you don't have to water them very often. But like, there's a very small window between not watered enough and way overwatered, or just completely dried out and dead.
Yeah, if the plant needed it every day, you could create a routine around it. But one
Yeah,
that barely needs it, you just totally lose track of it till it's too late.
I don't know when to water it in the first place, let alone try to keep track of it.
Most of our plants are in the dining room. My kids never finish their waters. It's pretty perfect. I just take every day just one glass. I've got 4 of them. Just take them, dump them in each plant. They stay pretty alive.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep my hot peppers alive over winter, like
Mm.
for the last 5, 6 years. And
Outside?
no, they're potted, so I bring them into
Uh,
the basement,
oh,
trim them
nice.
back, only water them once a month, and just kind of let them stay dormant.
That makes
And
way more sense than keeping them outside in the snow.
I found that when I forget about them, they do much better than when I actually try to care for them. And so I've given up.
Hmm.
Instead of just letting them be and ignoring them and see what happens, I've just given up on trying to save them at all, and I'll just buy new ones each year. Plus, my stomach's struggling to handle the hottest peppers in the world nowadays, so maybe I'll just give up
Hey,
altogether.
yeah. Yep. Comes with age, man. My son, we were growing onion shoots, or what are those called? Scallions.
Yeah.
And my son thinks they're the hottest things ever. He thinks I'm growing hot peppers in the garden, and he had all his friends over a couple weeks ago, and he's like, I'll give anybody $1 if they can eat one of these things. And he's like, took a bite out of it, and he's like freaking out, running around like it's a YouTube challenge or something like that. And his friends are just taking bites. I'm like, I thought you said you had hot peppers, and I'm
Uh,
just, yeah.
so Chad knows when we have get-togethers with friends, historically, I would take one of the hottest peppers off the plant, cut it up for everybody. And there's a video of me trying to see if I could handle a bite of a Carolina Reaper without anything. And I just started hiccuping like crazy, like just sends the
Mhm.
diaphragm going. But my tongue, it didn't burn my tongue too bad. But now, because it's been a couple years since I've really been able to handle it because of my stomach, like
Yeah.
after one of those parties, I woke up the next day. There might have been a few beers involved too, and I was just like vomiting blood and like thinking, "Oh no, this is horrible. I need to go to the ER. I'm dying." And they're like, Yeah, it's probably just the hot food and a couple of beers there. So just don't do that and you're good. I'm like, you're sure? Because that was way more blood than I'm comfortable with.
Wow.
My wife loves to call me out for, like, it was crazy that I thought I needed to go to the hospital when I was vomiting blood. She's like, that would have wasted time. We could have done something else. I was literally vomiting blood. So
No, that makes total sense to me to go to the hospital for something like that.
Yeah.
she was irritated that we were going.
What do I know?
I think she just wanted the life insurance money.
We were supposed to go to F&M.
All right. Any other thoughts?
No, I think we did it.
All right. Let's end it how we always end it there. Just try to stay positive out there, looking towards the bright side. Make sure you're naming and caring for your inanimate objects so they don't become sentient and come after you, because you just never know when that smelly couch might become aware and decide to swallow you whole because you haven't taken good enough care of it. So stay vigilant and try to stay happy out there.
Put that on a bumper sticker.